Hi guys, welcome back. Trevor Swenson with PTSD Through the Darkness, my personal journey with post-traumatic stress disorder and trauma and stressor-related disorder. And I wanted to talk to you today and revisit a topic that I had a couple of episodes on, and that was the topic of alcoholism. And one of the things about PTSD is that it gives you a lot of time because, as a rule of thumb, at least for me, there's been just a ton of isolation by necessity, and also just because I haven't been up to being able to do very much, haven't felt very well, haven't felt good physically, and obviously emotionally have been a wreck a lot of the times. And there's been a lot of isolation, and with isolation comes a lot of time to rethink the trauma, to rethink times during the battle that you maybe didn't have a lot of time to reflect on because you were in the midst of the battle and you couldn't quite put two and two together. But today, something interesting happened that I had a very clear thought, which may be surprising to some of you, but I had a very clear thought about my battle with alcoholism and chemical dependency. And I wanted to talk about it to hopefully give you a sense of hope and encouragement. And maybe you'll understand where the hope and the encouragement comes in to this topic I'm going to discuss about alcoholism. It was very clear to me when the diagnosis was made and the process of care, collaborative care, came together. Again, that's very important to remember that as well, that the key for me was not that the symptoms of PTSD weren't being addressed. They were all being addressed individually, but it was the collaborative care that became the absolute turning point for this battle that I am in, because everybody got on the same page, everything tied together absolutely perfectly to a T, including the chemical dependency. And one thing that I wasn't ready for with beating alcoholism, as I thought about the December day that I had my final drink and it was a huge victory, I recognize today that the years after that, up until right now, actually, have been extremely difficult. In fact, I will tell you that there have been significantly more days that have been unbelievably difficult than there have been good days after I quit drinking. And I had to pause and think about that for a moment as to why that was. And within that, I want you to recognize the danger of alcoholism. Alcoholism does a wonderful job of covering up lots of hurt, lots of unresolved trauma, lots of dysfunction, lots of pain, lots of suffering, lots of emotional torment. It does a wonderful job. In fact, I still remember she actually was the first psychotherapist I had that gave me a diagnosis of PTSD, of which I've had many at this point in my journey. She has since retired, but I still remember her saying, "It's a wonderful drug, isn't it? It does a wonderful job." And I remember dwelling on that for a bit at the time that I was fighting it, and we could openly talk about my alcoholism, that it does an unbelievable job in taking care of superficially the things that come along with PTSD, namely the anxiety, the depression, the intense duress, the intense emotions it not only gives you the euphoric feeling, but it also pushes those things away to be dealt with a different day. And my different day came the day after I became sober. And I quickly recognized that I had so much to deal with that, in fact, the other day I was with my primary doctor, who is absolutely a wonderful man in treating PTSD, and he said, "You now are dealing with clean, intense, severe PTSD. That is what you're dealing with. Now that the drugs and the chemicals that were masking all of the things that needed attention, now that that was gone, I had to deal with the real thing, the real monster of PTSD." And I was talking with my wife this morning, and we had a very open discussion about my beating alcoholism, and how ironic it was, or it is, that there have been so many horribly challenging days and situations since that day. And it takes a good doctor to look you in the eyeballs when you are feeling that way, when you've given away your blankie, your comfort in alcoholism, and you've done that for your family, and you've done that for your body, and you've done that literally to save your life, and you are left literally laid wide open to deal with the ugly things that need to be dealt with: anxiety, depression, social aversion, irritability, anger. I can go down the list: nightmares, insomnia. Think about the sleep disorders that I've battled, that I'm still battling, that I've talked about, that alcohol took care of like that. The anxiety, alcohol took care of it like that. If I was feeling depressed, alcohol took care of it like that. And I was killing myself. I wasn't dealing with the trauma and stressor-related disorder that was the underlying factor in the alcoholism. And my condition started to decline. And it started to decline in a very rapid, painful way. So much so that it literally cost me everything as far as earthly value is concerned. It cost me my career. It cost me friendships. It cost me emotional pain and suffering. It cost me all of these things for the greater good. And I just want to give you a bit of encouragement today that if you are struggling with alcoholism, if you are struggling with chemical dependency, that it is worth the fight afterwards to be sober, and then to start professionally addressing the issues that are underlying. You know if you have an alcohol problem. You know if you have a chemical dependency problem. You know if you are covering up trauma that has gone years without being addressed in a healthy manner. And I just beg you today to take that step, even though the days following may be difficult. I will tell you, and I've had to be validated myself by professionals on a continual basis, so I know how much validation means. What is going to happen in the end is going to far outshine the way that you are feeling and dealing with those things and dealing with the trauma that you have so bravely chosen to get professional attention for. But I just wanted to talk about that, the weird thing that happened that literally just hit me now, years later, as to how quickly and how steadily I declined after the chemical dependency was stripped away, and I was challenged with facing exactly what had happened to me and what had developed within me over a length of time. And so take heart and know, please know, that the joy that you're going to feel without chemical dependency, without alcoholism, is going to be a pure joy. It is not going to be a false joy. It's going to be a real joy, a real calm, a real peace that is not artificial, but there's a row to toe in getting there. And I will tell you that just being aware of that decline and readying yourself for the battle that is ahead is something that is important for me to pass on to you, that became very clear to me this morning over a cup of coffee. And it was not a good morning for me. That this morning I sat quietly in a chair with earplugs in and was fighting off intense waves of anxiety. But through that anxiety, I started to think of productive things and things that I could pass on to others that would be helpful in their journey with PTSD and trauma and stressor-related disorder. And that's what came to me this morning. So I didn't want to miss the opportunity to pass that on to you today. This is Trevor Swenson with Through the Darkness. We're moving through the darkness. We're not standing in it. We're not going to set up camp here. There are better days ahead for both you and for me. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, pass this on to somebody that might be struggling with chemical dependency in their trauma walk or in their anxiety and depression walk, and get professional help. Take that first step. It's scary, it's humbling, but I promise you it's worth it in the long haul. I'll see you next time.